Empire of Fire Part 2. Chapter 10, The Rebellion Rekindled. Rebellions don't wait for truth. They burn with the first name that gives them permission. Azadeh returned to the throne hall just after dawn. Dust clung to her robe. Her heart thundered like a war drum. And though her steps were calm, her soul had changed. The visions from the prison beneath the palace haunted her, images of cities burning, of a woman who wore the Flamebearer crown and shattered the empire not by conquest, but by choice. And now, something deep inside her felt awake. As she passed under the massive bronze doors of the court, she noticed it immediately, the change in the air. Whispers. Eyes. The unnatural silence of people who already believe you guilty. She was late. And she was being summoned. The king, General Darius, High Magus Zarvan, and a dozen satraps stood in a loose ring around a scorched scroll laid across a stone map of the empire. Cyrus didn't look up when Azadeh entered. He didn't need to. He simply said, "Your rebellion has returned." Azadeh stepped forward, jaw set. "It was never mine." Zarvan tilted his head. "And yet it calls your name." Again. Darius watched her closely, not with suspicion, but tension. He didn't know what she'd seen. But he knew something had shifted. Cyrus gestured to the scroll. A message from the east. From Karkesh. Azadeh's blood froze. Karkesh, the mountain city where her family's last citadel fell. The place where her father died. Where her people first called her Queen of Fire and Ash. Darius read aloud. "The flame you failed to extinguish has returned. The Fire Queen is not your wife, she is our blade. We rise in her name, as we did before. This time, we do not fall." Stamped beneath the message was the sigil of Sakardun, her sigil, but the seal was different. Twisted. Reforged with blood and a streak of obsidian. Azadeh stepped back. "I didn't send this. I didn't sanction it." Cyrus's voice was cold. "You don't need to. You already lit the fire. It burns without permission now." One of the eastern satraps stepped forward. Lord Varshad, a bitter, snake-eyed noble with a long memory and longer grudges. He pointed at Azadeh. She gave them hope. Her marriage was supposed to quiet them. Instead, she has become their goddess. She didn't ask for that, Darius snapped. Rebellion doesn't care what she asks for, Zarvan replied. It only cares that she breathes. Cyrus raised a hand. "I will not have another civil war. Not when Babylon watches. Not when the western border bleeds from raiders. We will crush this uprising." Zarvan stepped closer to the king and whispered something. Cyrus nodded slowly. Then said aloud, "General Darius. You will ride east within 2 days. Take a legion. Put this to rest." Azadeh's breath hitched. "You're sending him to kill my people?" "I'm sending him to kill traitors," Cyrus said. "And if they name you, then you are queen of nothing but ashes." She turned to Darius. "Will you go?" she asked. His jaw clenched. "I serve the empire." "I thought you served truth." "I don't have the luxury of ideals," he said. "I have war." Azadeh slammed the door shut and tore off her outer robe. The cracked pendant at her throat pulsed softly, once, then twice. The crown beneath the palace. The chained flame bound. The prophecy. She couldn't ignore it anymore. She had to act. Before the king destroyed the East in her name. Before Darius buried more of her people under the illusion of duty. Before Zarvan claimed the fire for himself. There was only one thing left to do. Find the true leader behind this uprising. Because if it wasn't her, someone was pretending to be. As the moon rose over Persepolis, a single white dove landed on the balcony of Azadeh's chamber. Tied to its leg was a crimson scroll, stamped with the twisted Sacredun seal. She opened it. One line. Come to the city of salt. Your throne is waiting. She exhaled slowly. The city of salt, Tema, a ghost city near the edge of the Great Red Wastes. Once a flame temple stronghold. Abandoned during the Empire's first purge of magic. Now it burned again. She dressed in black, plain and unadorned, and packed only what she needed. A dagger. The obsidian scroll. The cracked pendant. And a single gold ring Darius had left behind the night of the wedding. Not for love. For memory. She left through the servant tunnels, wrapped in shadow and silence. She didn't tell Darius. Not because she didn't trust him. Because if he knew, he'd follow. And if he followed, he'd try to stop her. Azadeh vanished into the night. And as the fires of Tema began to rise in the east, so too did a name that had not been spoken with reverence in generations. Flame Queen. Chapter 11, The Night of Masks. Some masks are made of silk. Others are made of memory. The most dangerous are worn with love. There was no road to Tema. Only shifting dunes and dry riverbeds, whispering wind and bone-colored ruins. Once, the city had been the easternmost fire temple of the Old Faith, where Flamebearer Queens came to fast before coronation. Now, it was dust and myth, buried in the red hush of the desert. But tonight, it lived again. Azadeh crouched on a sand-swept ridge above the city, wrapped in a charcoal-colored cloak, her face veiled. Below her, Tema pulsed with torchlight and movement, its crumbling stone arches lit anew. Rebel banners fluttered above once abandoned towers, her sigil, the sunburst of Sacredun, but inverted. Blood red and black. They raised my banner. But someone else holds the throne. She descended in silence, hood drawn low, eyes alert. This wasn't her city anymore. It belonged to a ghost. Tema's temple had once held sacred flame. Now it held revolution. The halls were filled with masked figures, warriors, spies, desert nomads, and former priests. Each wore a covering over their face. Some silk. Some metal. All anonymous. The scent of incense mixed with oil and sweat. Azadeh moved carefully, masking her stride, imitating the cadence of the new rebels. She carried no weapon save a hidden blade and the pendant beneath her tunic, now cracked, glowing faintly like a coal refusing to die. A voice echoed down the main corridor, "She arrives tonight. The Queen of Fire returns." Not me, Azadeh thought grimly. Her. The inner sanctum had once been the Flamebearer's chamber of communion, where flame and prayer met. Now, it was a war room. Torches ringed the perimeter. Rebel guards flanked every wall. And at the center of the room stood a throne made not of gold, but of fused obsidian and bone. Azadeh's breath caught. Because seated upon it, adorned in crimson robes and a half-mask of polished black steel, was a woman with long ink-dark hair. And a voice Azadeh hadn't heard in 7 years. "Remove your veil," the masked queen said. "I already know who you are." Azadeh did. Slowly. And the other woman did too. She removed her mask, and beneath it was the face of someone Azadeh had buried in memory long ago. Tyria. Azadeh staggered forward. "You're alive?" Tyria rose from the obsidian throne. "Alive, and more. You were taken. The temple guards spared me," she said coldly. "Because they feared what I carried. Because I whispered the prophecy, and they listened." Azadeh blinked. "You were with Zarvan." "I was inside Zarvan's prison," Tyria snapped. "And I came out reborn. She descended the stairs slowly. I waited for you, Azadeh. In the ruins. In the smoke. You vanished. You married him. You became their symbol. I became their prisoner. But they still saw a queen. So I gave them one. Azadeh's voice dropped. You used my name. They needed fire, Tyria said. You wouldn't burn. So I did. You're leading them into war, Azadeh said. You've twisted the prophecy. No, Tyria replied. I've fulfilled it. You're not of the bloodline. Tyria stepped closer. No. But I've bathed in it. And that's enough for the flame. Azadeh reached into her cloak and pulled free the obsidian scroll. I've seen the crown. The chained man. The tomb beneath Persepolis. This isn't a rebellion, it's a trap. For whom? Tyria asked, voice flat. For Cyrus? For Darius? Or for you? The room fell silent. Then Tyria said quietly, you came because you still believe in something. I came because I lost everything. She extended a hand. Join me. Azadeh stared at it. Her friend. Her betrayer. Her mirror. She shook her head. No. The guards tensed. Azadeh turned, sprinting for the archway. A blade sliced past her shoulder, another clanged off the wall beside her. She vaulted a fallen column, ducked into the dark passage beyond the throne room, and vanished into the temple's lower corridors. Chants echoed behind her. Flame Queen. Flame Queen. Flame Queen. But now she understood. They weren't calling for her. They were calling to her. Azadeh collapsed against the cave wall, hands bleeding, throat dry. The stars above the desert were sharp as shattered glass. She closed her eyes. Tyria was alive. Tyria had claimed her name. And now, the fire they had both carried in silence was burning out of control. Chapter 12, The Poison Chalice. In Persepolis, poison is not just in the wine. It's in the promises. The eastern winds returned with Azadeh. She re-entered the palace through a forgotten tunnel beneath the Hall of the Horse Lords, robes dusted with desert sand, pulse burning with urgency. The journey from Tama had been brutal, but the truth she carried was heavier than the miles behind her. Tyria lives. She leads the rebellion. And she's wearing Azadeh's name like a crown. But Azadeh knew something worse. It was working. The people believed. The fire was spreading. And if Cyrus reacted with force, it would only feed the flame. She had to reach Darius. But Persepolis had already changed. The court had been summoned to the Grand Hall for a rare feast, the festival of the moon's half-light, meant to honor peace, fortune, and sacred unions. But tonight's feast was a performance of peace before war. General Darius was to leave at dawn with 6,000 riders bound for the east. Every guest knew what that meant. And every noble wore smile stretched too thin, like gold leaf hiding rot. The hall glittered with firelight and wine. Flutes played softly. Silks shimmered. But underneath the elegance pulsed a tension as sharp as drawn steel. Azadeh entered late, by design. Every eye turned. She was dressed in ink-black silk threaded with copper flames, her hair woven up in a crown of braids. No veil. No hesitation. The Queen of Fire had returned, and she looked like she might burn the pillars down. She found Darius at the high table beside King Cyrus, Zarvan, and the satraps. He stood when he saw her. And for the briefest flicker, his eyes softened. She's alive. She came back. They met in the shadows of the hall, near the fountain where spiced wine flowed from a lion's mouth carved in jade. Azadeh's voice was low. Don't go east. I'm ordered to. Tyria is alive. She's leading the rebellion. She's not me, but she's using me. Darius stiffened. Tyria? I saw her in Tama. She's building an army. Then why did you come back? Because she wants to start a war, Azadeh said. I want to stop one. He studied her. You're telling me the rebellion is real, and you're asking me to stand down. I'm asking you to stand with me, she whispered. He said nothing. But his silence was not a refusal. Cyrus raised his cup. To loyalty, he said. And to fire, in all its forms. The court raised theirs. But in the moment between breath and sip, Azadeh felt it, the wrong scent. A note in the wine she remembered only too well, vetrut, sweet and lethal. Slow. Masked by spice and pomegranate. She didn't drink. She watched Darius instead. He raised his goblet, then hesitated. Azadeh caught his gaze across the candlelight. She shook her head. Just once. He lowered the cup. Zarvan noticed. One of the satraps, Lord Mara, stood to make a jest, then staggered. His goblet slipped from his hand. Wine spilled like blood. He clutched his chest, eyes wide. Then fell, twitching, to the marble floor. Screams rose. Guards surged. Musicians stopped. And in the chaos, Zarvan stood still, watching the death with two calm eyes. Azadeh whispered, he was meant to be you. Darius clenched his fists. Then someone knows I hesitated. The body was removed. Cyrus ended the feast early. But the damage was done. Everyone had seen Darius pause. Everyone had seen Azadeh refuse the wine. Rumors would spread like wildfire before the first light. In the war of perception, they had already lost control of the narrative. Darius threw a chair into the wall. They poisoned me. In the palace. Azadeh stood still. Zarvan. I can't prove it. You don't need to. You just need to survive it. He turned to her. You shouldn't have come back. I had to, she said. Because there's something worse coming than rebellion. She stepped closer. I've seen the crown. The flame-bound tomb. The relic is real. The prophecy is real. Tyria is using it. And the Magi want it before she takes it. Darius stared at her, breathing hard. Then, quietly, then we need to get to it first. She nodded. And then, unexpectedly, he reached for her hand. Their fingers met. Rough skin. Shared fire. No promise. No forgiveness. Just unity. A choice. Zarvan stood alone beneath the lion throne. His reflection shimmered in the polished marble. Behind him, a hooded servant knelt. She returns. He wavers. Zarvan nodded. Good. The prophecy must turn. But not before the blade is sharpened. He lifted a black vial of poison. One life was lost tonight, he said. Next time, it will be a queen. Chapter 13, Fire in Her Veins. There are moments when you stop being who the world told you to be. When the blood remembers. When the flame no longer asks, it claims. Azadeh stood at the edge of a sealed chamber buried beneath the oldest wing of the palace. This part of the complex was considered unsafe, damaged by time, earthquakes, and disrepair. In truth, it had simply been sealed off. Intentionally. She had come alone. Again. There were no guards, no whispers of court politics, no Darius. Just silence. And the fire calling her name. She pressed the cracked sacerdon pendant to the stone gate. It glowed. Then hissed. The door melted open. She stepped into a room walled in black glass and red quartz. The floor pulsed underfoot, glowing with old sigils, flame-bound markings no scholar could translate. But Azadeh didn't need to read them. She understood them. They were inside her. Like a forgotten language etched into her bones. In the center of the chamber was a pedestal. Resting on it, an ember's tone, small as a child's heart, pulsing like it lived. She stepped closer. As her shadow crossed the threshold, the stone blazed white-hot. The walls flared. The floor trembled. And something inside her snapped. Pain lanced through her chest, shoulders, fingertips. She gasped. Fell to her knees. The pendant around her neck shattered completely, pieces of bronze and crystal flying outward as if rejected by what now awakened in its place. Flames curled up her arms, not burning her, but binding her. She screamed. Not from pain, but from recognition. Because the fire wasn't hurting her. It was remembering her. She saw visions. A woman standing atop a pyre, smiling as the fire consumed her enemies. A crown hovering over a city of glass towers, melting under red skies. A child, her hand touched to flame, never crying once. A blade, burning with runes, plunged into a king's chest by a woman with Azadeh's eyes. And then, herself. Standing in the ruins of Persepolis. Alone. Crowned. But bleeding. The flame whispered. You are not meant to rule the empire. You are meant to judge it. Azadeh opened her eyes. The ember's tone was gone. It had fused into her palm, a mark glowing like molten gold, pulsing with energy. Her breath steamed in the warm air. Every part of her felt sharper, heavier, alive. She stood slowly, surrounded by rising trails of smoke. And in the stillness, she said aloud. I am the last flamebearer. And for the first time. It felt true. Darius stood on the training ground at nightfall, surrounded by captains, planning the eastern campaign. But something shifted. He froze mid-sentence, turning eastward toward the palace. One of the soldiers frowned. Sir? I felt something, Darius murmured. As if the wind had changed direction. As if something had awakened. He didn't know how. But he knew Azadeh was the cause. Azadeh emerged from the old temple like smoke from a battlefield, her skin glowing faintly, her eyes bright with something more than fury. And waiting for her, calmly leaning against a marble pillar, was Zarvan. She froze. He gave her a gentle nod. You found it, he said. Good. I was beginning to wonder if the bloodline had diluted. Azadeh's voice was hoarse. You knew. I remembered, he said. Long before Cyrus sat on the throne, I was a student of the old flame. I knew one day she would return. And what do you want from her? She demanded. He stepped closer. To do what fire always does, he said. Burn the rot away. Cleanse the empire. End the lies. By handing me over to your secret order? No, he whispered. By helping you ascend. Azadeh recoiled. I won't be your weapon. You already are, he said gently. You just haven't chosen where to aim. Zarvan left her with one final warning. Soon, the fire will demand a sacrifice. The only choice you'll have is whose name it speaks. She pressed her hand to the wall, the mark pulsed beneath her skin. And somewhere, faint but growing, she felt a presence through the flame, Tyria. Connected. Alive. Rising. Azadeh looked toward the horizon. And whispered, then let it burn. Chapter 14, The Oathbreaker's Mask. Betrayal cuts deepest when it wears a familiar voice. Especially when it swore to protect you. The wind over Persepolis had changed. The moon hung thin and sharp over the royal city, casting silver light across stone courtyards and domes. Below, the palace stirred with quiet unrest. Servants moved faster. Doors were locked tighter. The air smelled of cinnamon and fear. Azadeh stood on the terrace of her chambers, fingers curled around the obsidian railing, the mark on her palm still glowing softly from the Flamebearer's awakening. She wasn't sure how much longer she could hide it. Every day, the fire pulsed louder in her blood. Every day, she felt more like a spark in a forest of dry lies. And she hadn't seen Darius since the feast. He was reviewing maps of the Eastern Front. The rebellion was gaining speed. Tyria had begun moving camps across the Karkesh Pass, targeting supply routes. Every move was too precise for coincidence. "Someone inside the palace is feeding them," he said aloud. "Someone who knows our tactics." One of his most trusted captains nodded grimly. "We suspect a leak in the upper echelon. Possibly a quartermaster or a strategic aide." Darius rubbed his temple. "Find them." But someone already had. Azadeh returned to her chambers to find a note pinned to her bed. No seal. No signature. "The one closest to him is the one furthest from you. Look where the shadows fall behind the shield." She burned the message immediately, heart racing. There was only one man who had stood beside Darius through every battle, every strategy, his most loyal companion. Commander Tasher. And suddenly, memories began to shift in her mind. Tasher asking too many questions about her pendant weeks ago. Tasher delivering Zarvan's invitation to the moonlight feast. Tasher always entering the war chamber last, leaving maps unrolled. A chill slid down her spine. The one closest to him. She found Darius there alone, pacing, his jaw clenched. "I need to speak to you," she said. "So do I," he replied. "I think we have a traitor." "I know," she said softly. "It's Tasher." He froze. "That's impossible. He saved my life in the dunes of Duzur. He took a blade for me outside Tyra's gate. And how many messages has he passed through the satrap halls since then? How many strategies has he seen you revise before you slept?" Darius stared at her. Then, without a word, he turned and stormed out of the chamber. Commander Tasher stood alone beside the fire pit, adjusting the leather bracers on his arms. He looked up just as Darius entered. "General," he said. "I heard rumors." Azadeh stepped in behind Darius. "Tasher," Darius said, voice low and dangerous. "I want you to swear again. Right now. To the throne, to the Empire, and to me." Tasher hesitated, just a blink. And that was enough. Azadeh's voice was ice. "He won't swear. Because his oath already belongs to someone else." Tasher's mouth opened. But Darius was faster. He struck with the hilt of his sword, knocking Tasher backward into the table. Scrolls flew. A map caught fire. Tasher scrambled for his blade, but Azadeh was there, the flame in her palm igniting with a hiss of light. "Don't," she warned. But he didn't listen. He lunged. And Darius drove a dagger into his chest. Tasher gasped, choking, clutching the blade. "You were never meant to wear the crown," he hissed to Azadeh as he fell. Then he was still. Later, they found coded parchments in Tasher's quarters, messages passed to a rebel agent embedded in Zarvan's priesthood. He had leaked campaign plans. Locations. Weaknesses. He'd been Zarvan's mole for years. Darius stood in the war chamber, face pale with disbelief. "I trusted him with my life." Azadeh, standing beside him, said nothing at first. Then softly, "That's how betrayal works. It asks for your trust first." He looked at her. "And you? Can I still trust you?" She opened her hand. The flame mark glowed softly on her palm. "I don't know," she whispered. "Because I don't know what I'm becoming." He stared at the mark. Then, to her surprise, he stepped forward and placed his hand over hers. "I do." Zarvan stood once more beneath the lion throne. This time, he wasn't alone. A new figure entered, a robed girl with a mask of ash and glass. Zarvan bowed slightly. "The bloodline burns," he said. "And the general bleeds for it." The masked figure spoke, her voice soft, unmistakable. "Let them love each other. It makes the fire easier to steal." Tyria. Chapter 15, The Magi's Demand. Power doesn't always knock. Sometimes, it asks politely, just before it steals your soul. A storm had gathered, not in the sky, but in the corridors of power. The royal council convened in full for the first time in months. King Cyrus sat high on the lion throne, robed in midnight blue, his eyes shadowed with sleeplessness. Around him stood the satraps, nobles, and priests of the high court, each whispering in fear, anger, or ambition. Azadeh stood alone before them, unbowed. But every breath felt like a blade at her throat. Behind her, Darius remained at her side, silent, armed, and visibly defiant of what was coming. And then, like a vulture circling its prey, Zarvan stepped forward. He held a scroll. Unsealed. Already read. He didn't need to speak loudly. His voice was the kind that filled a room, like water soaking into cloth, quiet, steady, inevitable. "It is the judgment of the Magi Council that the Flamebearer bloodline now poses an active threat to imperial stability. The prophecy has begun. Fire has stirred beneath the palace. Loyalists rise under her name. Assassins target the king's general. A rebellion reignites in the east." He paused. Then looked directly at Azadeh. "We do not demand her death." A few in the court exhaled in relief. "We ask only that she be surrendered to the Temple of Inner Flame, placed under divine guard, where she may be studied, and protected." Protected. The word hung like a trap draped in silk. Azadeh didn't flinch. "You mean caged?" Zarvan gave a gracious smile. "We mean preserved. For her safety, and ours." Murmurs erupted. "This is madness, she's the queen's consort. She's also the source of the uprising. You can't detain a royal without a trial. She's not royal. She's ancient." Cyrus raised a hand. Silence fell. His face revealed nothing. But Azadeh saw it, the flicker of doubt. The ache of a ruler caught between order and fear. Darius stepped forward. "If you take her," he said, "you lose the east. You lose me." That stilled the chamber. Cyrus looked to his general. "You'd threaten the throne?" "I offer a warning," Darius said. "The rebellion is a fire, yes. But she is not its fuel. She is its answer." Zarvan scoffed. "An answer that glows in the dark and sets maps aflame?" He pointed toward Azadeh. "Show them. Let the court see what you've become. A trap. A challenge." But Azadeh, slow and deliberate, stepped forward. She raised her right hand. The flamebearer mark burned to life, bright, gold-red, pulsing with heat. Gasps swept the room. Some stepped back. Others bowed. A few crossed themselves in ancient gestures not seen since the time of the old queens. Zarvan smiled. "You see? She is no longer one of us. She belongs to the flame. Azadeh lowered her hand. No, she said calmly. The flame belongs to me. Cyrus stood. Even his silence now carried weight. He looked at Azadeh. Then Zarvan. Then Darius. And finally, the court. Until the rebellion is quelled, he said, Azadeh will remain under palace guard. She will not be surrendered. But she will not leave Persepolis. A compromise. One that pleased no one. Not Zarvan. Not Azadeh. Not the court. And certainly not Darius. But it was something. Cyrus stepped down from the dais and walked past them all. One spark more, he said under his breath, and this empire goes to ash. The mark still glowed. Azadeh stared at her hand in the dark, unable to sleep. Darius sat nearby, sharpening his blade with long, controlled strokes. They're afraid of you now, he said. I know. You should be afraid of them, too. I am. He looked up. But you won't run, will you? She shook her head. Not while the fire's still mine. Zarvan returned to the high temple. He lit a black candle. And whispered. The king hesitates. The general bleeds. The queen resists. A figure stepped forward from the shadows. Tyria. Veiled in red. Eyes glowing. Then perhaps, she said softly, we should let the fire choose for them. Chapter 16, Exile by Midnight. Some fires cannot be caged. They must choose flight, or burn the walls down. The city slept, but the palace did not. Darius paced like a lion in chains, hands twitching at his sides. The words of the king haunted him. You will remain in Persepolis. Guard her. Watch her. If she breaks the flame's seal again, you end her yourself. But he couldn't. Not anymore. He hadn't realized when loyalty had become love. Perhaps it happened the night she spared him with truth. Or when she showed the court her flame and didn't blink. Or maybe, he'd always been hers, and only now admitted it. He turned toward the window and whispered into the night. If they want her chained, then let us run free. The guards outside her chamber had changed. They weren't Darius's men. They wore the dark lacquered armor of Zarvan's private sentries, silent, unmoving, and wrong. Azadeh stood at the edge of her balcony, cloak fastened at her throat, her satchel hidden beneath the bed. Inside, the obsidian scroll, the fragment of the Flamebearer crown, and a dagger carved from firestone. The flame in her palm pulsed beneath her glove. Insistent. Ready. She could escape by force. But she would not escape alone. A shadow shifted across the balcony. Then a familiar hand gripped the stone. Darius pulled himself over the ledge, eyes sharp. You're late, she said. You're glowing again, he answered. She raised an eyebrow. And you're still here. He stepped forward, placed a hand on her cheek. We don't have time for clever words. Then let's make them our last. They kissed, brief, desperate, flame meeting flint. Then they ran. The corridors of the lower palace were ancient, cracked, and half forgotten. Darius knew the path by heart, a passage first used during the Reign of 12, built as a royal escape route. They moved fast. Past half-lit fire bowls. Past the doors of the temple priests. Past halls that once held flamebearer coronations, now dusty, desecrated. But when they reached the final archway, they found it guarded. 2 figures. No helmets. No hesitation. Zarvan's elite. Azadeh stepped forward. They drew blades. The flame is not yours to free, one said. She didn't answer. She simply opened her hand. The flamebearer's mark exploded into gold light. The guards staggered, shielding their eyes, then screamed as the very air caught fire. Darius lunged, struck low, and took the first down in a single stroke. The second tried to run. He didn't make it to the stairs. Outside the hidden garden wall, a lone desert steed waited, its reins tied loosely to a cypress root. Darius had arranged it at dusk, with the help of an old stable master who once owed him a favor. Azadeh mounted first. Darius followed. And without a final glance at Persepolis, they vanished into the night. Zarvan stood beneath the great flame altar as a guard approached, breathless. "She's gone." He closed his eyes. Then opened them again, calm, cold. "Let her go. Let them both go." The priest beside him frowned. "What?" "Zarvan, the desert will break them. Or remake them. And either way, the fire will do what it must." He turned to Tyria, who stepped into the light from the inner chamber. "Begin the hunt." Dawn broke slowly. Azadeh and Darius rode across crimson sand, the sun bleeding over the dunes. Behind them, Persepolis shrank into the haze, golden and terrible. Before them, the east called. The rebellion. The prophecy. The crown buried beneath flame. Azadeh didn't know if she was heading into war, or destiny. But for the first time, she wasn't running from something. She was riding toward it. Chapter 17, Across the Burning Sands. The desert remembers what the Empire forgets. By dawn, the sand had turned gold. Azadeh and Darius rode beneath a sun too large for the sky, their desert steed moving with rhythmic urgency through the fractured terrain east of Persepolis. They carried only what they could hide beneath their cloaks. A single skin of water. A satchel of flatbread and smoked figs. One obsidian blade, sacred to the Flamebearer line. And the last remaining fragment of the Flamebearer crown, now glowing faintly with every mile. Each breath of wind stung their skin like whispered curses. Every bird that circled overhead could be a scout. But still, they rode. Behind them, the palace burned in rumor. Ahead of them, the red wastes waited. And somewhere beyond that, the answer to everything. They made camp in a dry gulch surrounded by jagged stones. Darius lit a smokeless fire, careful to shield it with a curve of shale. Azadeh sat cross-legged, her flame mark casting faint orange light over her hands. The silence stretched long. Darius finally spoke, the pendants glowing again. Azadeh looked at the fractured metal shard hanging from her neck. "It glows when we're close," she said. "Close to what?" She hesitated. "A city that's not supposed to exist anymore." Darius frowned. "You said we were heading to the rebellion." "No," she said softly. "We're heading to what comes after it." She reached into her satchel and pulled out the obsidian scroll. "There's a place called Merkava, the sunken city of the first flame. It was the birthplace of the original Flamebearer Queens. It disappeared 300 years ago." Swallowed by the desert, Darius murmured. "A myth." Azadeh looked up. "So am I." They rode at sunrise. The terrain shifted beneath them, sand giving way to cracked red salt plains that shimmered with heat mirages and unseen depth. The horse began to slow. By mid-morning, the water was low. By noon, it was gone. They walked. Azadeh used the flame in her palm to press water from cactus roots and guide them around dead canyons. She never said how she knew where to go. The flame guided her. It remembered. And that meant she didn't need to. Not yet. They found them on the third night. Or rather, the assassins found them. The first came as a shadow, a dart of steel just missing Darius's throat. He rolled, blade flashing, and brought the man down in a heartbeat. Azadeh heard the whisper just before the second struck, by order of the temple. She flared the mark in her palm, and the assassin's blade shattered mid-swing. He screamed as fire caught along his arm and armor. Another came from behind. But Darius was there first, his sword catching the desert light. He moved like war incarnate, every breath a strike, every motion brutal. When the last assassin fell, Azadeh stepped into the blood-soaked sand and looked down at his sigil. A black flame on red silk. Zarvan's mark. "They're hunting us," she whispered. "They always were," Darius replied. The wind shifted again. Cooler. Sweeter. Azadeh's flame mark pulsed like a heartbeat. She turned toward the eastern horizon, and stopped. "Darius," she said quietly. "Look." He followed her gaze. There, in the distance, was a shimmer, not of heat, but of light. Domes, half sunken in sand. Columns, broken but standing. And at the center, a spire of obsidian, reaching like a black flame into the stars. "Merkava," Azadeh breathed. "It's real." Darius stared. "How is it not buried?" "It was never buried," she said. "It hid." They approached at dawn. The sand seemed to shift out of their way. An ancient gate loomed before them, carved with Flamebearer script, untouched by time. "Only she who carries the wound and the fire may enter." Azadeh pressed her palm to the stone. The mark flared. The gate split open with a hiss of steam and ancient power. A gust of warm air blew from within, carrying voices. Echoes. Whispers. And a name that had not been spoken in the Empire for centuries. Flame Queen. Azadeh and Darius stepped into the darkness beyond. Not as fugitives, but as something far more dangerous. Chapter 18, The City That Waited. History is not written in stone. It waits in silence, buried beneath the sand, until someone dares to listen. The gate closed behind them with a soft, final sound, like a breath exhaled after centuries. No sand had spilled through. No wind stirred within. Inside the forgotten city, the air was warm, charged, and impossibly clean. As if the desert itself had agreed to preserve it. Azadeh stepped forward, palms still tingling from the gate's touch. Before her, ancient streets unfurled beneath cracked obsidian stones. Towers tilted toward the heavens. Silver vines crept along pale walls. Domes half buried in dust glowed faintly with runes. Darius walked beside her in silence. His sword remained sheathed, but his hand never left the hilt. "This place," he whispered. "It's not just ruins." "No," Azadeh said softly. "It's waiting." As they passed under vaulted archways and fire-shaped statues, the silence shifted, not empty, but full. Not absence. Memory. Their footsteps echoed down avenues that hadn't seen light in centuries, but the city felt aware. Like stone that still dreamed. They passed carvings of queens crowned in flame, holding swords made of pure light. Each inscription bore the same sigil, the flame-bound spiral, etched in fire gold. In one courtyard, a massive fresco stretched across the curved ceiling of a ruined temple. It showed a woman, face veiled, crowned in bone-white flame, standing over a broken empire, her hand outstretched as fire rained from the sky. And beneath her, in faded script, "Only she who ends the world may remake it." Darius stepped back. "That's not a prophecy. It's a warning," Azadeh murmured. They entered a building with no windows and a single entrance. Inside, scrolls, stone tablets, and memory glass stacked higher than the eye could see. Not burned. Not weathered. Preserved. Azadeh reached for one scroll, marked with her ancestral crest. As soon as her fingers touched it, the scroll unfurled itself, glowing softly. The runes lifted from the page like smoke and arranged themselves in the air. A voice, female, powerful, familiar, spoke. To the daughter who will rise again. Know this, I burned not because I was cruel. I burned because the empire would not bend. I took the crown, and I shattered it. And still, they feared me more dead than alive. The chain they forged to bind me was prophecy itself. But prophecy lies. It does not tell you what must happen. Only what they fear might. Azadeh's eyes stung. Darius stepped forward. Who was she? Azadeh answered, Queen Ereshkigal. The first to wear the flame. And the first to be betrayed by it. In the deepest vault beneath the temple, they found a sealed chamber, round, lined in obsidian, and filled with skeletons still seated on carved thrones. Each had a crown. Each bore a burned hand. Azadeh stepped carefully among them. Her flame mark pulsed. These are the queens, she whispered. The ones who followed Ereshkigal. Each one bore the fire, and each one was consumed by it. Darius moved beside a tall throne, its skeletal queen still gripping a sword made of blackened fireglass. He touched it, then recoiled. It's hot. Azadeh nodded. The fire never left them. It remembers. On the central altar, a final scroll lay sealed in molten gold. Azadeh reached out, this time, no hesitation. The seal broke. The scroll unraveled. And the final line of the Flamebearer prophecy burned into the air. One must burn to break the chain. And the flame always chooses her own. Azadeh's breath caught. Darius said nothing. But the meaning was clear. Not every queen who bore the flame survived it. And now the fire had chosen Azadeh. As twilight bled across the horizon, Azadeh stood at the center of Merkava's great hall. A new crown sat on a plinth of stone. Bone-white, pulsing softly, forged of the same spine-like design seen in her visions. It had not been placed there. It had grown there. Darius watched her, eyes dark. You don't have to take it. I do. No. You want to. She looked at him. Not with arrogance. Not with fear. But with something deeper. Resolve. Because if I don't, Zarvan will. Or Tyria will. And the fire doesn't care who wears it, only who can survive it. She reached out. The crown lifted, not by her hand, but by the flame itself. It hovered for a moment. Then lowered onto her brow. Light exploded through the city. The flame in her veins surged like the sun rising through her bones. And a voice whispered inside her skull. It begins again.
Across every empire, every forgotten age, stories still whisper. If this tale stirred your spirit, leave a like to honor the echoes of the past. Share your thoughts in the comments. Every voice weaves a new legend into the sands of time. And subscribe to our YouTube channel Historical Fantasy Stories, where myths walk beside history, and every discovery changes the world. The next forgotten legend is waiting to be found.